Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar on mass notification and emergency communication single wire solutions. I am Kate McCauley, the marketing manager here at iTech Support in Orlando. I will pass this off to Brent Kudrowski from Single Wire Software. So Brent, I am passing the ball to you.
All right, I got it. Thanks, Katie. Hello, everybody. Brent Kudrowski from Single Wire Software. Again, as Katie mentioned, I am a territory manager here at Single Wire, and I am here to talk to you folks about mass notification and emergency communication. So, what I have on the horizon here for you folks. Let me just get my slides going here. Katie, how do I forward them or flip them?
Up there at the top, do you see to the left there's a 03? That's the third slide. There's an arrow to the right. You can forward them, or you can just use your arrow button.
Got it.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So I apologize, folks. I usually use my own PowerPoint, but I have the slides uploaded here in WebEx, which is just fine. So again, today what I have is I'm just going to talk a little bit with you folks about Single Wire and our Informacast application, talk about some trends and directions that we see in mass notification and emergency communication, talk specifically about the functionality that we have in the Informacast application, as well as some futures, some of the things that we're working on, some modules that we're building into that particular application, and then going to jump right into a live demo. So that's what I have on the docket here today. If you have any questions, as Katie mentioned, if you want to drop them in Q&A or if you on the chat window, either way, I can see them. And I certainly want to make sure that I answer your questions. And don't worry if your question is relative to the topic at hand or on the screen or not. I just want to make sure you remember your question, and I'll certainly remember where I was. So let's get started. So the notification platform that we have is called Informacast by Single Wire. And the main functionality that we bring to the table is emergency notification, mass notification, and general IP paging on your Cisco Unified Communication System. So if you want the ability to send messages out to multiple devices within your environment, we can do that. Or if you simply want the ability to pick up the phone, dial a number, and page to phones that are on your network, we can do that as well. So at a really high level, that's really the functionality that we bring to the table. As far as trends are concerned, kind of in the emergency or mass notification world are concerned, you'll see some legislation as well as some regulation in the middle of this slide, and these are all organizations that are trying to get their constituents to do a better job of communicating to their students, their employees, their patients, as well as their customers in the event that there's an emergency. So depending on what vertical, if you will, you are in, depends on which of these particular types of legislation or regulation applies to you. But what we try to do is focus our notification platform on providing and facilitating the emergency communication that puts you in line with these particular regulations. So that's what we keep an eye on, and we continue to add functionality to our application that adheres to these types of guidelines. So from a line card perspective of functionality, as I mentioned, general paging for day-to-day use, the ability to send messaging to phones, speakers, as well as computers, audio and text messages, if you'd like. And then there's event-driven notification, which is really what most of our customers are interested in. As organizations go through emergency preparedness procedures, they define what they call incident response plans, and that can be a bunch of fancy jargon for some what-if scenarios. So, for example, if we have a tornado warning, here is the message we want to send to these specific individuals. If we have a building evacuation, here is the message we want to send to these specific individuals. If there's a chemical spill, here's the message we want to send to these individuals, etc. So it's really about organizations going through and deciding upon what are the most likely scenarios that we may have to deal with from an emergency communication perspective. And then typically they'll put together messaging around that, both text as well as pre-recorded audio, so that when those situations arise, the people that dispatch those messages can do it very quickly, very efficiently, all from a single pane of glass. So that is where the majority of the demand that we see from an emergency notification and mass notification type scenario comes from. To take that a step further, we have automated or device-triggered notification as well. And it's very similar to event-driven notification, but we kind of take out the human element. So we can connect our Informacast system to systems you are either purchasing or that you already have in place. So if you want to trigger mass notification or emergency notification messages when somebody pulls the fire alarm, we can do that. If you want to integrate it into your building's security system, we can do that. If you want to receive alerts automatically from services like the National Weather Service, you can do that. And then at a physical level, if you want to connect our system to a panic button or a virtual panic button, like a keystroke on a computer or a button on a phone, we can do that. And then we also have the ability to monitor your 911 calls. I'll talk a little bit more about that particular functionality here in a subsequent slide in just a minute. We also have push-to-talk and intercom type capabilities within our application suite, and then we do have a bell scheduler that primarily K-12 customers are interested in, but I do have other customers, both in higher ed as well as manufacturing, that are interested in that just from a scheduling of messaging that goes out on a scheduled periodic basis, like the library's closing in 10 minutes, or patient visiting hours are over in 30 minutes, or shift changes as well as break schedules in a manufacturing environment. So we have a sophisticated scheduler built into the product, built into the product as well. So this slide does a good job of graphically illustrating how the communication works. So on the left side are all the devices that can trigger a notification. So you can dial in via cell phone, you can trigger it from your Cisco phone on your desk. Panic or duress buttons, which I talked about earlier, we can integrate with your access control system at a contact closure level if you like. We can trigger messages off the web admin console, which I'm going to demonstrate for you here shortly. And then we also have the ability to trigger a message by receipt of an email. The Common Alerting Protocol is a government standard that they've worked on for messaging communication that we're compliant with. And again, I have a slide on that that'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a few minutes. And we have an open API on the front end of our application as well, where we can receive information from other upstream systems, bring that information into the Informacast mass notification engine. And then on the right side of this illustration are all the devices that we can send both text and audio messaging to. So we can send it to the Cisco IP phones, your digital media displays that are attached to your digital signage solutions, IP-based speakers, analog paging systems, other network systems via our API, and then outbound email as well. So we can actually send an email with the text and audio out to your recipients as well. Those are all devices that are usually, or systems that are usually within the confines of your IP network. And then we can also send this messaging off network as well. So if you want to post it up to Twitter or Facebook, or also start a calling campaign or an SMS text messaging campaign, we can do that as well. So we really cover the gamut as it relates to how many devices or how many ways we can trigger a notification, as well as how many devices we can send that messaging to as well. And we've been able to do that via our plug-in architecture. So what happens is, as we see systems out there that our customers are interested in sending messaging to, we develop plugins for that right into our Informacast application that allows us to have a very smooth interface to those systems that allows us to deliver the audio and text message information from our system. So again, that does this slide is probably one of the better slides as it relates to functionality within the system. One of the things that we just came up with as well, and we just released, is our conference call plugin. So this allows us to automatically set up a conference call and start inviting people to that conference call when you send certain messages. So when you send a message and you want, say you have a building evacuation message, and you have a policy that says every time we have a building evacuation message, I want to have these 5 people on a conference call immediately, so you can talk about how you respond both internally as well as externally to the situation. You can do that. So you just assign the conference bridge and the recipient group of the message, and as soon as that message is triggered to that recipient group, it automatically starts calling people, playing the message for them, and giving them the option to press a key on their phone to be added to the conference. So some nice collaboration built into the actual messaging here. CallAware is the 911 monitoring solution that I mentioned earlier. This is included with Informacast, and is really a nice solution for understanding who's dialing 911 in your organization and allow you to respond a little bit quicker. It actually takes the information from your phone, be it the username, the extension, the location, or what other variables you want to includes it in a message and sends it to whoever you'd like to send it to, whether that's the front desk where the fire trucks are going to show up, or maybe your security group, so your internal security group can respond and be aware of the situation as well. So very popular application, and we also now have the ability to record those calls. So we have a lot of customers out there who just purchased CallAware just for that specific, Informacast just for that specific functionality. So just know that that's something that's included with Informacast. I mentioned the CAP, or Common Alerting Protocol plugin, and that type of capability. This is something recently, relatively new. It's a government standard, or an industry standard, I should say, that the government's been working on for mass notification solutions. So it's a common language as well as variables and things of that nature that allows systems like our Informacast system to receive alerts proactively by subscribing to them on different sites. So as you can see, we've got the state of Wisconsin outlined on a map, so we've outlined that within the plugin and said this is the geographic or region that we're interested in monitoring, and then we can select and say I want to see all the severe weather alerts for this region, and I want you to send them to this specific recipient group. So it allows you to grab some of that information proactively, bring it into the system, and whether you want to send that to people to proof those messages and then have them resend it, or if you want to just send those to all of your employees, customers, students, or what have you, you can do that. So you have a couple different ways of getting that information out to the people that you need to get it out to. But very popular plugin, especially in Florida, as you can imagine, with hurricane season and things like that. Something that we've gotten a lot of interest in. So understand that that is an option available with Informacast as well. We are just working on our Instant Messenger plugin. We actually have it developed. It's in our QA process right now, and we're going to release this in about the next 30 days. What we've done is we've integrated with yet another Cisco technology, the Jabber architecture. So if you are running Jabber within your environment, whether you're running that on your computers, you're running it on your Macs, your iPhones, your iPads, Droid phones, etc., if you're running the Jabber application and have it connected to your corporate Jabber server, we have the ability to leverage that architecture and send you both the audio and the text messages of our alerts through that Jabber client. So that's certainly some big news for us. We're excited about this. A lot of customers, both customers as well as potential or future customers, very interested in this type of capability, which allows them to make the investment in Jabber and use that architecture for mass notification as well. So something that's very exciting to us, and looking forward to a few deployments here right away with customers who are chomping at the bit to get this particular type of capability. We also integrate with Cisco's DMS solution, so you have the ability to send the text of a message and pop that up on the Cisco wall boards that you may have throughout your organization. We do integrate with other digital signage solutions as well, but this is the one that we actually have stood up in our lab, which I'm going to show you here shortly. We don't sell IP speakers, but it usually is something or I should say we don't manufacture IP speakers, but it usually is something that is part of the solution. You can certainly talk to your folks at iTech if you're looking for recommendations on IP speakers. There are several manufacturers out there, Atlas, Cyberdata, Valcom, as well as PoE, or not PoE, as well as A&D IP speakers. And they come in many different shapes and sizes, and it allows you to have the capability of simply installing that speaker, plugging it into your Power over Ethernet switch, and it is automatically registered with Informacast, and we can address that item or that speaker within a recipient group and deliver audio and or text to it, depending on whether it has a scrolling text capability. So these are becoming more and more popular. Just an option for you if you maybe don't have an overhead paging system, or if you're primarily interested in sending audio and text to the Cisco phones, but you have some areas that either don't have a phone or where you need additional amplification, IP speakers is something that might be interesting to you. So another option for you as it relates to the overall solution. So that's what I had for you from a slideware perspective. Just wanted to give you a quick intro into what we had available from a functionality perspective and kind of setting the groundwork for the demo. So I'm going to have to move some windows around here and share my desktop here for a little bit, so bear with me and we'll jump right into the demo. All right, so you should be seeing my monitor right now, which has a web browser up and showing you the application. Give me 1 second while I bring the rest of that stuff up. All right, so what I have here is the actual Informacast application. It's a web-based application. All of the control, both from an administration perspective as well as a message launching perspective, is all done within the web-based interface here. I'm logged in as admin, so I have all of these options available to me. If you have users that are going to trigger messages, they're only going to see home messages and recipient groups, as well as the help function. So that they can send those messages. So some of this other stuff won't be available to them depending on what role they are assigned to within the application. This is one of 2 video-based labs we have out of our offices in Madison, Wisconsin. So we've got a full-blown demo lab here where we've got some phones here, Cisco phones on the table, a few on the shelf. We've got a couple IP speakers in the room. I've got a strobe light here, and then I also have a wall board here that allows me to push the messaging to that as well. So you'll kind of see what happens and get an idea of what happens when we send the message to that particular room. So just to kind of get the party started here, I'm going to pop back to the web interface, and I'm going to kind of walk through how you would trigger a message. So if I go into messages and I go to send or edit messages, I'm going to select my tornado warning message. So I've got a bunch of messages here that I use for demo purposes, but I'm going to use my tornado warning message. I'm going to click send. I'm going to select building 2/all, which is the fictitious recipient group I created for that room, and I'm going to click send.
Warning, there is a tornado in the area. Please take cover immediately.
So you heard the audio come out all of the phones as well as the IP speakers. You can see the message scrolling across the IP speakers here as well, which are the speakers that are capable of carrying the text of the message. You saw the strobe light kick off there as well, and then you also see that the wall board changed, and we sent that particular message to that wall board. As I drag some windows around here, this is the desktop notification system as well, so the audio and text from that message can be sent to computers as well. You'll notice that it says, warning, there's a tornado in the area. I click the details button. It says, please take cover immediately. So you have that ability to have each of your computers be a broadcast endpoint as well within your environment. Also, I had email trigger as well. So if I look into my email and I look at one of the emails that I received, you'll notice that when I sent that here at 12:21 Central Time, that is, it says, warning, there's a tornado in the area. Please take cover immediately. And then it also uploaded the WAV file of that particular message as well. So again, you can send both text as well as the audio from those messages to email. If we look at kind of the phones here a little bit, I'm going to zoom in on one of these phones. This is actually a 7962. You get an idea of what the text looks like for that particular message that we sent on that particular phone. I can also scroll in on this particular phone as well. I think this is a 9980 from Cisco, a color phone. You get an idea of what what it looks like on the phone when we send that. And also notice that you've got some soft keys here, including the details button, which will give you the rest of the message, just like I showed you on the desktop notification system. I can also scroll in on the digital signage board as well that we had up there, and you get an idea of what that looks like. Now we can change the font, the color, anything we want to do there on those screens, but this is just a template message that we've sent. So just demonstrating how we can push that messaging to those specific wall boards. Great. So again, that's just a good example of how we could send a message and how it could get to those different types of of endpoints. I'm going to come in and kind of show you how we create those messages. If I go into that particular tornado warning message and I click Edit, you'll notice that you'll see some of the text that you saw in the actual message. So I've got warning, there's a tornado in the area, and then please take cover immediately was the long version of the text. That is an unlimited field that you can use so that when people click the details button on either the phone or their desktop notification system, they get the rest of that particular message. And then you notice we've got the scroll duration as well as the scroll speed, which controls how many times it's sent to the speakers and at what speed we're scrolling it. So we have that capability, and this is just a preview of what the text looks like on the phone. So if I click on the audio tab, you'll notice it says there's a 6-second audio message present. I click Edit. What I could do to override that is I type in my phone number, it calls me, and I could re-record the message. Or I could go in and I could upload the audio. So if you want your sound files or audio files done with your own sound editing software, or you want them professionally done for consistency's sake, you can do that as well. You get the WAV file and you simply upload it to that particular message. So you've got several options there on how you want to send audio to or attach audio to a specific message. You could put a pre and post tone on that. You also can skip phones in use. So if you don't want them to get a message when they're on the phone, you can check this box. If that phone is busy, we will not send the message to it. Also, we can override the play volume settings. So if you're worried that your users are going to turn their phones down and they're not going to receive emergency messages, we can, on a message-by-message basis, either put that phone on maximum, medium, low, or as is volume. So generally, from a best practice perspective, people for emergency messages put them on maximum because they wouldn't send the message out if they didn't want people to get that. So just keep that in mind. You do have that flexibility when it comes to sending those messages. We also have message priority. So if you are doing a lot of paging within your organization using Informacast, more prevalent usually in healthcare as well as manufacturing, but if you are doing a lot of paging, we recommend to have your regular standard everyday pages to be messages that are a lower priority, and then emergency messages being a higher priority. When Informacast sends a message, it checks the priority, and if the priority of the message is higher than the one that's playing, it automatically cuts the existing message off and broadcasts the higher priority message. And we do that so that we don't have to worry about the system being quote-unquote busy when somebody wants to send a high priority message. Rebroadcasting, we can rebroadcast the message several times on account basis, or you can rebroadcast it until you come in and actually stop it within the application. So that's a good rundown of what is available from kind of a message creation perspective and what some of the different options are. I can move over to recipient groups, and that's really where we talked about how we create the message and what the message looks like from both a text and audio perspective. But now let's talk about who actually gets the message. So if I look at my building to all recipient group here, I go in and I edit that, and a couple things come up here. So you can see that individually I selected my email, which you saw, my SMS text messaging, which is basically a phone that I sent the text to, couple IP speakers that you saw in the demo room, the digital media player digital media player there in the demo room that was the screen or the LCD display attached to the DMS system that allowed me to post that message up to that digital signage solution. You also see that I have the machine-to-machine output port here on demo room that showed you the strobe light being triggered. And then the other thing I had as part of that group was the WordPress group, and I didn't show you that yet, but this is basically the ability to post a message to a website. So if you have a centralized location where you're publishing your messages, notice that on this web page it says on June 21st, which is today, I sent the warning, there's a tornado in the area, please take cover immediately message. So some organizations like to use their website as a central location for all those types of notifications, so we can automatically post that message up there as needed when we send those. So you have that capability as well, and that's what we use WordPress plugin for. So those are all the devices that we did individually, and if you notice there aren't any phones in here right now, at least in this section. So if I go in and I edit this, on the right side are all the devices that are already part of this group. On the left side are all the devices that are registered with our Informacast server. So I can go in and say I want this phone. By double-clicking on it, this phone. I want this phone, etc. So I can add some specific phones here as well as other options that are on the system. So if I want to post it to Facebook, I double-click on Facebook, and when I send this any message to this recipient group, these are all the places that that message is going to go. Now, what we recommend for phones, you notice this is still the building 2/all group, and individually we selected these components, but we also can apply a filter to this group so that we capture all the devices we want to capture in kind of a dynamic fashion. And what we have here is we've got a filter enabled called any directory number that begins with 46, I want as part of this group. I know all the phones in that demo room start with extension 46, so that if anybody adds or removes phones from that demo room in that extension scheme, they will automatically get added to this group. So it makes it real easy for you as an organization to say, if I want to page this building, and maybe I know that this building starts with all these extensions, I can do that. But maybe not. Maybe you have phones mixed in that building that aren't, that the common denominator is not the extension. So I have other variables I can create rules on. Maybe I want to say, I do know that that building, all the phones are in a specific VLAN, so I'm going to say I want all the phones where the IP address begins with 10.100.12 because I know that is the VLAN that all the phones in that building are a member of. So as we look at the phone database and we see that there are phones that have IP addresses of 10.100.12, it'll automatically add them to this building 2 group. So again, the spirit here is configure this once without having, and as you make changes to the devices within your environment, you're not having to spend all your time in Informacast adding them to new groups when you make those changes. So these rules have been very popular to help ease the burden of administration. You also can make groups of groups here as well, if you have some type of a hierarchical type architecture that you're trying to stick with from an implementation perspective. We can do that as well. So that is recipient groups. The 2 main components, again, are messages and recipient groups. The other thing that I wanted to talk about here is are the plugins. And I mentioned this earlier, and this is for any of you out there that have seen our Informacast application before. Plugins are something that we've developed that architecture just over a year ago and has been very popular. And what it's done is it's made this universal plugin architecture has made it very easy for us to code new plugins, which are basically interfaces to other systems when that becomes something that is attractive to customers, potential customers, or just the market in general. So really a big step forward for us. And this is where we get a lot of that additional functionality outside of maybe just the devices on your network, like your phones or your computers or your speakers or something like that. So this is where you have the ability to do a conference call, setting up a conference call, as I mentioned earlier, with our conference call plugin. This is where we connected to the digital media manager for the digital signage solution. This is how we connect to Facebook, the inbound CAP plugin, which I talked about earlier, inbound email, our machine-to-machine plugin, which allows us to either receive information from panic buttons that are triggered at a contact closure level or push information out to contact closure type devices like strobe lights, things like that, which I showed you in the demo. Mobility, which allows us to send messaging to SMS type messaging to cell phones, as well as initiate a dialing campaign to deliver audio to cell phones, landlines, and things of that nature. We've got outbound email, which I showed you, allows you to take the audio as well as the text of a message and send it out via email. Our paging gateway I didn't spend much time on, but this is our multicast or multicast to unicast gateway. So if you have WAN sites that don't support multicast, you can put in a paging gateway. We'll send the message out via unicast to that paging gateway across that WAN site. It'll hit the paging gateway on the other side of the WAN site and convert that traffic back to multicast if that is a design consideration. We can send it to some popular broadcast systems in the education space like School Messenger that you may or may not have in place already. Scripting plugin, which allows us to write scripts to other systems as well. Twitter, which is kind of self-explanatory, and then WordPress, which I showed you, was the ability to send that message up to a specific website. So we could really, again, cover the gamut so far with a lot of different technologies and integrate with the most popular technologies out there that people would use or would use for emergency purposes. This list is growing quickly. As I showed you, we're releasing the Jabber plugin here in the next 30 days, and we release about 2 plugins a quarter, and that has been the trajectory of our design or our development path thus far, and we don't see that slowing down anytime in the near future as additional feature requests come in, and we are coding plugins to facilitate that. So that is that from a plugin perspective. Again, that is the application, all web-based from an administration perspective, so you can administer this application or actually send notifications from this application, whether you're on your from a device on your LAN or possibly a device that is connected via VPN, etc. So you don't necessarily need to be there. 2 things that we are working on from a futures perspective that are so new that I don't have any slideware on them. Number 1, we're coming out with a hosted offering. So in the event that you have a situation where you can't get to your Informacast server on your network, or your network is down and you want to send it to other devices like mobile phones and things like that that aren't on your network, you'll be able to log into the cloud service and trigger those as well. That's coming out here at the end of the year. And then we also are coming out with a very effective redundancy strategy, so you can put multiple Informacast servers within your environment. They will be clustered very similar to how Cisco clusters their unified communications managers with kind of a publisher/subscriber type architecture. And we'll be coming out with that here near the end of the year as well. So a lot of exciting things going on here at SingleWire and adding enhancements to this particular application. So that's what I had. Kate, I don't know if you had additional information that you wanted to talk about, or if we wanted to open it up for any Q&A for anybody out there. But that was the material that I wanted to present today.
Thank you all for showing up today. Brent, thank you for being here and sharing all this cool new stuff that's happening with SingleWire. And I hope to see you guys in the next event.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.